the Icons of Real Estate podcast. Are you ready to learn the proven money-making secrets from top-producing Icon agents? Ready to skyrocket your business? This podcast is for you. Tune in every week with your host, Tomasz Fonseca, and find out how to implement proven strategies to 10 times your business. From $3 million to $30 million in just 12 months. Brought to you by the Masters in Real Estate Marketing, Arter SEO.
Hello and welcome back to the Icons of Real Estate podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Timothy Kataino, and today we have a good show for you guys. Look, I don't even have to say this because we always give you nothing but the best, and we always bring you nothing but the best guests on the show. And today we have a man that has been doing wonders in the industry. Well, I would say he is the glue that keeps everything intact. And without him, look, I don't think you have much success in this industry. This man has been doing wonders, dominating the industry for over 11 years. So I know you've probably heard of him. You've probably given him a call, and he's helped you create a legacy for your family. Ladies and gentlemen, you're wondering, who am I talking about? Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Bishoy Habib. Bishoy, welcome to the show.
That was great. I feel like a wrestler walking in the ring right now, man. That's awesome.
Oh man, I could have done
That's
it like
awesome.
that, you know. I could have done it. And in the red corner, we have.
Yeah. You know what I need? Every time I'm walking in a closing or something, I need you to like hype me up like that, get everyone all ready.
I can be your hype man. I can be your hype man, you know.
That's it.
I can be that guy, you know, at the table, people sitting there and be like, hey, introducing with over 11 years of experience, with a proven track record. Oh, man.
Right.
I bet you
That's hilarious.
we'd make so much money. I'm actually going to write that down.
It would get people excited about a process that's not always exciting. It could be scary. So that'll put some fun into it. So that's awesome. Way to bring some spice to the boring, right? To the mundane.
Definitely. I think it does need spice. It does need that. But people will probably be shocked, like, man, this started off so good. Why is it so stressful now? This is not what this guy presented to us. But yeah, man,
right.
You know, I'm so excited about today's episode, man, because you've been in the industry for a while. And I think without you, a lot of the real estate transactions that are going on within Florida would not happen, because we need people like you. But for people that don't know you, that don't know your story, can you just tell us about yourself and how you got to this point in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks for having me on the show. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
I know you put on a great show, so I was very honored when you invited me onto the show. Yeah, so my story begins back when I was a kid. My dad immigrated here from Egypt with my mom, didn't speak English, was in the healthcare industry, and as a pharmacist actually doing well, but then he kind of looked around in the 70s and realized that the way to wealth in this country was through real estate. He didn't know what the word real estate was when he moved here. And then over the course of several years, he was self-taught in what real estate was. So, you know, he had been an active investor in real estate since before I was born, actually. So I grew up in a sense. It always felt like that was the only thing I wanted to do. Even though all three of my sisters went into the healthcare field, all three of them are dentists. My mom was a dentist. I was the only one that went the opposite way. And I think my brain always just worked differently. Besides the fact that I almost failed science in high school and middle school and just hated it, right? But then numbers, I was always good at numbers. I was always good at English. I was always good at negotiating, and I just had a different mind. And so I kind of felt destined to go this path. So I got my degree in finance. Market was in the tank. I went to law school and didn't really plan to practice law when I got out of law school. I was like, let me just use the degree to leverage into a better position in real estate. Well, that was 2012. So we didn't know it yet. That was actually the best time, but we didn't know that. We thought it was the worst time back when it was happening. And the jobs were scarce in real estate. So I fell back on my degree. I got a job in New York City, in Manhattan, working with one of the largest developers of hotels in New York City history, Worked up there for 2 years, got some tremendous experience in the hotel. In commercial real estate, he focused on hotels, but it's all a similar process from our perspective. Acquiring land leases, construction loans, partnership agreements, disposition, selling the assets, and everything in between. So you saw the whole cycle of how a $100 million project in Manhattan happens. That was crazy experience for me when I was 22 years old from Florida, right? I'd never seen anything like that. And we didn't have that kind of stuff in Central Florida at the time, those kind of developments. Now they're becoming more common. I did that for a couple years. I moved back down to Florida 2 years later to be closer to my family because my mom got sick. And so that brought me back down here. I've been down here ever since. That was 8 years ago now. So and I've been in Tampa. So I've seen Tampa just explode. And I went to undergrad in Tampa and I went to graduate school in St. Pete at Stetson. So I consider myself a Tampanian, and over the last 12 years practicing law, I've done a ton of real estate transactions, over 1,000 of them. I've closed over $12 billion in deal flow. I've worked with lenders, developers, builders, brokers, done a ton of title work, and worked with a ton of business owners. And I work with small investors as well. I love doing that. So really, the name of the game for me is any sort of transaction I love to be involved in, negotiating, getting better terms for my client, protecting my client. Those are the things that I love doing the most. After 11 years out, which was last year, I decided to go off on my own. I started my own law firm, Levacy Legal. And so we built the law firm on three main premises. Number one is being responsive. The number one complaint that clients have about their attorneys is that they can't get a hold of them. That's my biggest strength, I would say, as an attorney, is responding to my clients. Number two is investor friendly. So you have attorneys who will kill a deal just because they can and they don't understand. For me, it's all about cautious, but taking calculated risks. So I say I'm a deal maker, not a deal breaker. And then number three is being trustworthy, right? That's extremely important in this day and age when attorneys have a bad rep, and I don't think most of us are bad apples, but there are some bad actors out there. And so I do pride myself on being trustworthy, being honest. I've made it 12 years now as an attorney. I've never had any sort of a serious issue with a client or anything like that. And so to me, that you couldn't pay me $1 million to do someone wrong at this point. I mean, that's my reputation. That's who I am. And so those are the three pillars that I built my law firm on. And it's been a tremendous year this month.
Wow. That's amazing, man. You have an amazing story. And what I love about it is you decided to, I think the difference between you and any other realtor out there is you can actually leverage your expertise to actually help your client get the best deal. And I think that is something that's unique. And also, as an attorney, I mean, I think it's good that you have the experience in real estate because you understand exactly what's going on. And I think that's the reason why you are a deal maker. You are well informed. Walking into those rooms, you know exactly what needs to happen. You know exactly how to take care of your clients. My question to you is, with a track record of success in representing prominent developers, investors, and financial institutions, what unique legal challenges do you often encounter in the real estate industry, and how do you navigate them?
It's such a dynamic industry, the real estate industry, because there's so many moving parts. I just came from a lunch today with a developer in town, and he's a big developer. They do single family. They do about 100 new builds a year, right? It's about 8 a month. He was telling me today that, he buys lots in a certain part of Tampa for $400,000. 6 years ago, his all-in costs at the same area. That means the lot and the construction was $400,000. Now, 6 years later, that's just the price of the dirt. And then his home's another 400 on top of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you just think about how much things have shifted in 4 years or 5 years, especially where we are here in Florida. And you start to understand how quickly things can shift. And you even think about from 2 years ago when interest rates were at all-time lows, which we may never see again until now, where people are really seeing tremendous signs of distress in the market, both residential and commercial real estate, right? It's such a dynamic market. It's so many moving pieces. There's so many things that impact the real estate market. And based on that, there's a lot of people smarter than me that are planning 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years out. And their plans and their strategy change according to what's going on, which also changes at such a rapid pace, excuse me. And so for me, the fact of how dynamic real estate is, how many moving parts there is, to me, that's the biggest challenge, because what's relevant today is not necessarily relevant in a year from now, or it may be relevant, but it may not be the most relevant. There may be other factors. COVID was a once in a lifetime situation, but you think about that changed everything forever, in my opinion, or for at least for a generation, in my opinion. And so you just have to adjust. We're not going to hit another COVID, I don't think, again anytime soon, but anything could happen. We have the hurricanes here in Florida, and we see how much that's changing the landscape. That affects the insurance, that affects how builders build, that affects affordability, that affects every person in this country. And, all these things really have a trickle down effect on the entire country. And especially, again, I'm in Florida, so these events have such a tremendous impact on the citizens of Florida. So everything changes so quickly. And there's so much at stake for so many stakeholders. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is really staying on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that one of the pillars of your company is that you want to be responsive, that communication is key. My question to you is, how do you effectively manage communication and collaboration between clients, opposing counsel, and other parties involved to facilitate, I would say, smooth transactions?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And I think in one word, it's over communicate. So I think a lot of attorneys, and in general, I think sometimes people in business, but especially attorneys, if there's nothing to report, then you just won't hear from them. And it's like, inherently, I understand why, an attorney might act that way. I mean, we're all busy. But what happens in a client's mind, if you can get inside the mind of the client, is, well, my attorney's not responding. Well, I paid him all this money. Well, he's too busy for me. Well, something bad must be happening because he's not reassuring me. And as I often think about it, like when I go to a doctor's office, I feel helpless and clueless. So whatever that doctor tells me, he could tell me, I have 6 months and I'd believe him. He could tell me I'm the healthiest person in the world and I'd believe him. I don't know any better. I mean, I think I'm healthy, but that's not my area. That's his area. So if he says some random disease that I have, I probably believe him. So in the same token, that's how my clients feel when they come to me, right? They don't know, is this deal going to fall apart, or are they going to make $1 million on this deal? It's based on how I'm interpreting the legal document or documents or transaction or circumstances around the event. And so the amount of faith that they put in me as an attorney, I understand why they may be a little bit more uptight and nervous. This is new to them. They don't know how this usually works. And when you put that kind of mindset and you realize that to me, this might be every day I'm negotiating big deals and big money or whatever the case may be. To them, this might be their biggest deal of the year or maybe in their lifetime, right? Depending on what it is. When you treat it with that kind of respect and you understand and you empathize with that client, it makes it a lot easier to say, hey, listen, here's what's going on. There's nothing to be worried about. This is a negotiation. Whatever they say now doesn't mean we're going to accept it. It's normal that they'll take 3 weeks to respond to us because of X, Y, and Z. This is a big deal and they got to run it through this and they got to do this and environmental or a survey, whatever. They may not know that. They may think that the other guy is jerking them around. And so just keeping a constant communication, even if I'm busy, it's important to say, I can't talk today. I'm booked up this week. Let's connect next week, right? And I try not to give that answer if there's anything pressing, but the point I'm trying to make is just communicating with the client. Hey, this is what's going on. There's nothing significant that we need to discuss. Let's circle back next week. Let's circle back in 2 weeks, whatever. So that puts clients at ease. And the number one bar complaint from attorneys when the clients complain to the bar is they're not responding to me, right? So all you got to do is respond, put their mind at ease. Everything's okay. And I think that resolves 95% of the issues clients have with attorneys.
Yeah. And man, thank you for that because I love the way you put it. You are like a doctor to them, whatever they get the information from you. So imagine that the one person that you're relying on for constant feedback and reassurance, and that person is nowhere to be found. It can definitely stress you out. It can make the
It
process
messes
a
you up.
lot. Yeah, it really does. So I'm glad that you decided to differentiate yourself and be like, hey, you can always count on me to give you a response. You can always count on me to keep you updated. So I think that's one thing that your clients love, and clients that are actually going to reach out to you as a result of this podcast are going to love about you. Now, just excuse me for a minute because I want to give a special shout out to the sponsors of today's episode, and that's the Icons of Real Estate Podcast Network. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, we are in the business of helping you get started with your real estate podcast. So whatever your real estate podcast dreams are, we are here to help you bring them to life. Now, my question is, if you were to start your own podcast, what would you call it? You know what? We'll ask the man himself. Bishoy, if you were to start a podcast, I mean, look, you have everything set up. You have the nice background, the mic, with that being said, what would you call your real estate podcast?
I'd never thought about it until you just asked, because I don't really have any intention of starting a podcast. I mean, it could happen in the future. I'd call it the Cap Stars.
The Cap Stars. And why would you call it the Cap Stars?
That's the name of my brokerage and investment company that I have with my two partners. It's called Capstar. And so I think it's a pretty fun name. And I always just felt like, the Cap Stars, it just flows. Maybe with some Z's instead of an S. I don't know.
The Cap Stars. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So ladies and gentlemen, please do reach out, comment down below if you do want to get started with your own real estate podcast, and we'll help you get started. Now back to the conversation. Can you discuss any current trends or emerging issues in the real estate law that professionals in the industry should be aware of?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few. I think we're dealing with right now a lot of distress in real estate. Okay. People don't realize how bad things are right now. People don't realize how bad things are going to get. It's so peculiar. It's so weird, right? It's peculiar because the stock market's at an all-time high, but consumer debt is at an all-time high. Auto loans are at an all-time high, and we're starting to see a lot more foreclosures, right? And commercial real estate debt, it's not at an all-time high, but it's getting very scary how much. I think we're over 5% commercial debt is in default right now, which is a significant number, by the way. For those who haven't been following the global trends, meaning the macro trends in the country, the interest rates, obviously everyone knows about those, but they affect commercial real estate much more than residential, because residential, you get locked into a 30-year note, right? So your interest rate, if you took it out at 4%, you're locked in until you sell or refinance. Commercial debt's very different. Commercial debt operates on typically 3, 5, or 7-year loans. That's the average. So if you did get a loan at 3% or 4%, back in the good days, there's a very good chance that right now you're coming up due on your loan. And when it comes due, that 4% loan jumps to 9% or 8.5%. That's a significant difference because that's all profit. Nothing else has changed. You're not getting anything more. Right? You're not getting a better tenant. That's not capital expenses that's going into the building you're going to recoup. No, that's strictly interest. That's the cost of money. So now all of a sudden, the numbers don't make sense. People can't, a deal that made sense at 4% interest doesn't make sense at 8% interest a lot of times. And that's why there's been a slowdown in the commercial transactions. And that's why there's been an uptick in the default rate for commercial properties. Now, we're in a very weird stage right now where if it's a good property and it's a good owner, sponsor, you could work something out with the bank, but maybe you can't, right? Maybe you don't want to. Maybe you give the keys back to the bank. And so we're at a very weird time right now. And I say this because it's going to get worse. Why is it going to get worse? It's just my opinion. But my opinion is that we're not going to see a significant relief from these interest rates for 12 to 18 months. Everybody, when the year started or the end of last year, everybody had priced in all these rate cuts, right? In the beginning of this year, and 3 and 4 and 5 rate cuts. We're in June now and we haven't had a rate cut. And guess what? We're probably not going to have one this year. My opinion. I don't think we do. I don't think we do. That's the only way we're going to, kill inflation, right? So when you think about that, you think about the $1 trillion in commercial real estate debt that's coming due. Most of it's going to encounter this issue. We have a very serious problem on our hands. And to make it worse, the work from home situation is completely killing the office sector. You got buildings in downtown Chicago that are zombie buildings. Nobody's in there. They're completely vacant. The owners handed the keys to the bank. The bank can't even get 20 cents or 30 cents on the dollar for what they lent on these properties are literally worth, maybe they were valued at $600 million, 5 years ago. Now they're trading for 200 million, right? So this is an insane, devaluation of commercial real estate that has never really happened in my lifetime. On the flip side of that, what they're saying is that this is the time to buy. This year, if you're looking for commercial real estate, this is the time to buy. And so as an attorney, I focus on helping those. I work with lenders. I also work with borrowers. So on one hand, I represent lenders, but also borrowers who are trying to work out, restructure debt, things like that. We are also doing outreach on my investment side, right? We have the investment side, reaching out to these distressed properties and trying to find deals, save these people from the bank coming after them for the difference, working something out with the bank, and then taking over the property. And so there's scenarios where you could come out on top if you play it smart, but that is, to me, the biggest thing that's going on in the real estate, at least on the commercial side. I mean, my answer was more commercial. On the residential, that's a different conversation. We got a whole slew of things going on there with the new regulations and the buyer broker agreements and affordability here in Florida. So a lot of different things we could talk about, but on a macro scale, the commercial stuff, I am very curious to see how that turns out.
Man, especially with the way you put it, I'm curious to see how it's going to turn out as well. Now, just before we leave, I do want to educate our audience on this topic, and that's asset protection. Can you just highlight the importance of it? And I think as an attorney, you are the best person to talk to about this because, like you said earlier, for most people, they work most of their lives to acquire some of these assets. And it is quite good for them to actually understand how they can go about protecting them. Can you just enlighten us on that topic?
Yeah. So what I've realized in doing this for 12 years, I've seen clients who have been with me since day one. So I have seen 12 years of them investing. Is in the very beginning, you might be green and new and you're just so excited to get those first deals under your belt. You're not thinking 5 or 10 years ahead. And very few people are thinking that far ahead ever, but especially in the beginning. So you buy these deals, everything's going well, you're cash flowing, you're learning and you're focused on, generally speaking, the right things, which is acquiring more. What you're not thinking about is how to protect those assets because you never had those assets before, right? So you're not thinking that far ahead. And then what happens is 5 or 6 or 10 years down the line, you hear about a horror story. Something happens to your friend, something happens to a relative, something happens to one of your business partners, something happens to you. What is that something? A slip and fall, a car accident, divorce, who knows? Could be anything, right? And that person, whatever they've worked so hard for all these years and all those sacrifices they've made and all those investments and all that opportunity cost into putting that money into something else, it all gets wiped out. And I hate talking about it because I feel bad, but at the same time, it's the reality that you have to face. It's like, it is what it is. I don't make the rules, but I'm also a very realist, like a very pragmatic person. So I'm just going to tell you, you should have a plan to protect your assets, just like you should have a plan for your death, right? I mean, a lot of people hate talking about death and it's inevitable. It's scary sometimes, sure, but it's going to happen. So what are you doing to protect yourself in that event? It's the same conversation with asset protection. Florida, where I live, where I work, is the most litigious state in the entire country, and it's not even close. I'll give you a statistic. Florida is number one. New York is number two in terms of lawsuits filed. Florida has twice as many lawsuits as the next most state, and that's New York. Okay. We are in a litigious state. We are in a litigious country, and people want to sue for anything, anytime, any day. And it's getting worse. I'm telling you right now, it's getting worse. I'm seeing it. I'm watching it. I'm seeing what people are suing for. It's insane. And they're only doing it because they want to make a quick buck, right? Nobody wants to work anymore. You got to protect yourself from that. And the mistake I see a lot of investors make is buying real estate. The biggest invest, I'll tell you, this is a free tip. Don't own investment real estate in your own personal name. Ever, ever, ever own investment real estate in your personal name. Maybe you're residential. I understand. And in Florida, you have homestead protection. Not a big deal. You're protected. Anything else, do not put in your personal name, ever. Okay. There's very few things as an attorney that we say hard stop, but that's one of them, right? There's no qualifications. It's not but, if, then. No, don't ever put investment real estate in your own name. Well, how do you hold it? Well, there's ways to hold it, right? And there's land trusts, which I do a lot of for my clients. You know, there's certain LLC structures, certain holding companies, and that's all something that I help clients get set up for, to protect against inside liability, slip and fall, outside liability, creditor, hospital bill, car accident, something outside the property. And we make sure you're shielded both ways while maintaining full control of the asset. So these are things that people don't think about until it's too late. It's like insurance. You know, you get the policy not because you want it, but because if something happens, you need it. Not because you want the policy to kick in. You know, if you get a life insurance, you're not hoping to die, but you have to get it in case something happens, right? So it's the same thing with asset protection. Very important, very understated. Just think about it. It's something that you don't think about until it's too late, unfortunately. So I'm always encouraging my clients now to do that. And a lot of them are, and it's something that I'm very passionate about.
I'm happy you're sharing that with us. I think, like you said, people never want to discuss the worst case scenario. They never want to discuss, like, what if something bad happens? Those are not conversations that we're comfortable having. But I believe we need to have them. We need to have these conversations, because it's better you have it now than for you to now click on this podcast because something happened. Now you're like, okay, what was Bishoy talking about? Oh yeah, I shouldn't have put in my name. Man, what am I going to do now? That's the worst place to be in. I think whether you're here or not, you want to make sure that everything that you've worked hard for is protected, not just for you, but for the next generation. So thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. Now, I know we are running out of time, but I know that there's so many people out there that are just like, you know what, Tim, just tell us, how can we get in touch with Mr. Habib and his team? What is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can reach out, you can call the office. So the law firm name is Levacy Legal. That's Lev like Victor, ACY Legal. The name comes from, I wanted to help clients leave a legacy, so I combine the words.
Yes, I thought it was just in my head. I was like, wait, is this what he's trying to get at here? Because when I read, I was like, oh, Levacy Legal, leave a legacy? I was like, oh, maybe that's just me.
Yeah,
but wow, that's amazing.
Wait, so you picked up on it?
I did. But I was like, no, maybe it means something else. So I'm glad he actually touched on that.
Yeah. You know, Levacy Legal is the name of the law firm. So you can reach me a couple ways. You can go to levacylegal.com. The phone number for the law firm is 813-553-2699. I'm also on Instagram at Attorney Bishoy. That's attorney spelled out, and then Bishoy. And I'm active on Instagram. I'm always posting stuff and tips and stuff like that. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
All right. And ladies and gentlemen, the best part of it all is, look, he said he'll always pick up. He'll always respond. And that's one thing that you can have confidence in. So look, do yourself a favor, protect yourself, protect your family, and get the best legal advice that you can. Who do I recommend? I recommend Bishoy Habib. And I think you should actually reach out to the team. Bishoy, thank you so much for being a guest here. You were amazing, man. And I hope to have you again soon because I feel like there's so much that we haven't covered, especially on the residential side. But you know what? I think that will make the second conversation more interesting. And our audience would definitely be looking forward to it.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I will look forward to next time we catch up on the show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know this episode has definitely added value in your life. And you know what? If it did, hit the like button, share this with a friend, share this with your social circle because trust me, they will love you forever. It has been your host, Timothy Kataino, with the amazing Bishoy Habib. I think if you want to get the best service out there, reach out to him and the team, and they will help you out. And tell them that Tim from Icon sent you. And who knows, maybe you might just get a good deal. So, ladies and gentlemen, till we meet again next time, take care and bye.